What if the thing that wants you is not in your house or your dreams, but in the stories everyone swears are made up? The ones your cousin heard from a friend who knew a guy. The ones that start with a laugh and end with a locked door. What if those whispers stuck to road signs and restroom mirrors because something needed a way to travel, and it chose our mouths? Welcome back to Whispering Abyss. Tonight, I have something truly haunting for you. From phantom broadcasts that answer back to reflections that move a second too early, every legend here hides a rule, a price, and a name you should never say out loud. If you have ever driven a lonely highway or felt your skin tighten in a fluorescent bathroom at 2 a.m., you already know the feeling I'm talking about. From eerie voices on forgotten frequencies to motel rooms that check you in whether you like it or not, every story is a thread in the same dark net. Listen carefully, because each one leaves a mark for the next. Which story creeped you out the most? Tell me in the comments. And if one of these hits too close to home, I want to hear why. Story 1. The last broadcast from mile marker 13, they say sound travels farther at night, as if the dark is a long throat that carries whatever you feed it. And that is the first thing I thought when the AM band called my name and counted down from 13 in a voice that wasn't mine. The windshield was cold enough to pearl my breath. Bugs came in bursts against the glass and then vanished, like something had switched them off. The tow truck heater whined. The sodium lights on Highway 41 cast that sticky orange that makes rain look like a skin. I kept one eye on the shoulder for stranded cars and one hand teasing the radio dial because I talked to the night to stay awake. If you've ever worked the graveyard, you get it. Some nights you'll talk to anything that talks back, won't you? I shouldn't have answered, but I did, and a little part of the road ahead went quiet. My name is Eli, or it was last time I checked. If you're local, you might know me from the midnight call-in. I do when it's slow. I keep a cheap CB and an AM tune low, so drivers have a voice if they need one. I'm not paid for it. It's just something the guys in the yard tease me about. Too many nights with the radio, and not enough with a person. That was what my ex said, and she wasn't wrong. I'm saving to move out of town, and a big part of why is a promise I made the night she left. Change the route, change the job, change the noise in my head. But the dispatch computer had other plans. There's a bend at mile marker 13 where my calls cluster like flies. Could be the blind crest. Could be Folklore. Tonight, there was a repeat customer pinging near there. Declining would put me on the supervisor's list. Accepting put me on a different kind. You ever pick the lesser knife and only later realize both were sharp? The first wrong thing happened at the county line. The AM dial clicked over to 1313. There is number 1313. The needle simply stopped. The static shifted from wool to breath. When the voice came through, it wasn't station. It was my last voicemail to my ex. Only the vowels were longer, like someone stretching them to see how far they would go before snapping. I went cold down the spine and replied without thinking, the way you say sorry to the dark when you bump it in a doorway. 12 minutes to the turn, it said, calm as a clerk. The black ice air freshener on my mirror swung in a way that didn't match the bumps. The coyote on the shoulder was the second wrong thing. You see plenty of roadkill, but not with its mouth closed so neatly, like somebody tucked it in. When I passed, the static went soft, as if whatever had been pressing its face against the speaker sat back and smiled. You ever feel watched from inside your own truck? I opened the glove box to grab the old paper map I keep for the aesthetics. I like the way it smells like libraries. There was a circle and marker around 13 that I didn't put there. Inside the circle, someone had written a time, 2:13. Then the radio told me a funny story about myself. And by funny, I mean cruel. It played an old caller from last week, a drunk with a laugh like a cough. Except the drunk retold a mistake of mine I had never told anyone on air. I once considered taking one of the company winches and pawning it when things got bad after the breakup. I didn't. Still, the voice on the radio described the bolt patterns like it had my hands. I told the radio to knock it off, and that is when the highway lights ahead blinked out one by one like a giant had pinched them. The lights returned after 6 seconds. I counted. I was counting a lot. I caught my breath at the rest stop near the bend and almost called it in. Is that pride or foolishness when you don't ask for help because you want to prove you don't need it? I pulled back onto the highway anyway. The needle stuck at 1313 again. The voice cleared its throat. Left, it suggested, just as the lane split for construction. I took the right out of spite. The freshener stopped swinging as if offended. The dispatch pinged again. Same repeat customer, same dot half a mile ahead, but the GPS time froze at 1:13. No way. My dash clock said 1:58. My phone said 1:58. The GPS said it was still 1:13. I laughed, and the radio laughed a half beat after me, like an echo that learned a trick. I wasn't alone after the overpass. A kid in a hoodie staggered from the barrier, waving both arms. 18 or so, wet hair, phone clutched to his cheek like a shell. I braked, shouldered, and got him into the passenger seat, heat blasting. He kept looking at the speaker in the door. "You hear it too," he said. "Hear what?" I asked, but I knew. The singing, he whispered. "She's under the static. She says my name wrong." He showed me his phone. The lock screen clock also read 1:13. He scrolled the photos and snapped one of the dash to prove it. The flash painted the cab in white winter. The freshener made a neat black shape in the picture. We both stared at the image longer than makes sense until the kid squinted and asked why there were 4 hands on the wheel. There were only mine in real life. In the photo, there were an extra pair, pale and carefully placed, thumbs where they should be, like someone performing a demonstration. The kid gagged. I put the phone face down and kept us moving. If you've ever worked nights, you know the difference between a prank and a pressure. This was pressure. It had a direction to it. We reached the shrine at 13. 13 plastic flowers cable-tied to the guardrail, sun-bleached. People leave tokens after bad luck spots. The radio counted down again, 12 to the turn, and the kid touched the window with his fingertips like he could feel heat off the flowers. Every light over the highway buzzed at once. The freshener swung. The map in the glove box thumped shut without a draft. That is not a thing maps do. I knew then that the prank rumor from the yard had just enough truth to cover something else. We looked for it. Under the overpass, half hidden by kudzu, was a white van with a telescoping antenna stuck up like a stubborn weed. Stickers on the bumper were from our yard, the towing company. 2 for Donnie's favorite band. He's a world-class jerk. He once zip-tied a rubber snake inside my air vent. This could be his masterpiece. The kid hissed at the sight of the antenna. He covered his ears. The radio tried a new voice, this one a woman's, breathy, saying the kid's name wrong in 3 different ways like she was dialing combinations on a lock. I wanted to rip the antenna out of the van and beat it against the wall. Pride will make you theatrical. But then I noticed the frost on the inside of the windshield, a fine lace that belonged to January, not September, and the car battery under the hood was swollen and quiet. No power to prank with. The antenna didn't point at the road like you'd expect. It pointed toward the trees, and between the trunks, if I let my eyes lose focus, I swear I saw the air warp the way heat does over blacktop. "Not mine," the radio said, and the AM needle turned by itself until it faced 1313 again. I could smell the black ice scent without breathing in. The kid begged me to turn around. He said he would walk. He said anything was better than driving toward music that learned your name 1 letter at a time. But the dispatch dot hopped a fraction forward, and I remembered the repeat customer who paid extra cash under the table for speed and whose review had pushed me up a tier. Livelihood, reputation. The 2 legs of the ladder you do not kick out if you want to climb. I told the kid to trust me, and he said fine, but his voice had that flavor people get when they decide they will blame you if you live. The road split where it never splits. An unmarked service lane slid left like a vein. On my map, a penciled circle I swear had not been there an hour ago sat like a thumbprint with the word turn back inside it. The radio went silent for the first time, which was worse than anything it had said. Silence from a thing like that is a look. I had 12 seconds to decide before the countdown voice pressed down on the syllables like fingers on my throat. I took the turn. The freshener went perfectly still. The bugs vanished again, turned off. The trees were a tunnel, the world a throat. The kid held his phone up for a signal, and the screen showed a face filter for a face that wasn't in the frame. He dropped it. It slid under the seat. He did not try to retrieve it. We came into a clearing that smelled like hot coins and old air. The stranded vehicle waited in the center with its hazard lights dead. My chest went light. because it was my tow truck, not the one I was in. My tow truck, the same duct-taped tier on the seat, the same faded sticker of a lighthouse that my ex thought was corny, the same lucky keychain she had left in our apartment when she moved out, a pewter coin with a hole in it, an anchor cutout. It swung quietly from the ignition. The radio spoke in my voice, 13 seconds behind my breath. I tested it. I whispered, "I don't believe this," and 13 seconds later, the speaker whispered, "I don't believe this," close enough to make the hairs on my arms put needles through my skin. The kid put both hands flat against the dashboard, as if the plastic might budge and give him into something softer. "You can't be in two places at once," he said. "There are nights when choice stops being virtuous. It becomes surgical. If I shut the mouth of this thing now, I thought it can't borrow me." I remembered the coyote with the neat mouth. I remembered how the laughter on the radio was always an open mouth sound. I remembered the 13 plastic flowers, each a tiny cup. I reached without looking and closed my own mouth with my hand like I was forcing a yawn down the wrong pipe. The radio's speaker flexed outward like a lip. The countdown voice spoke around my name the way a dentist works around a tongue. It told me how many seconds remained until something fused. It didn't say what. I counted with it in my head, so it couldn't own the number alone. I felt that was important, like a rule you do not know you know until you need it. The kid tried to say something, and I shook my head. "No mouse. Not now." The map thumped again in the glove box. I opened it and found a second circle, small, drawn at the service road's entrance. "Turn back." I had passed it. I could not do an easy U-turn in this tight place anyway. The trees pressed in like ribs. The kid pointed, and I saw there were carvings on the trunks. 13 marks, 12 lines crossed through, and one left clean. My name was cut into the bark under the clean one in letters as neat as a clerk's. The hazard lights on my other truck didn't blink. They breathed, expanding and shrinking with a rhythm that found my pulse. The radio inside that twin cab spoke too, but its sound didn't travel in air. It traveled in the space between my thoughts, asking me to answer just once, asking me to say hello to myself so it could pass a wire between us and hang there. I understood then the trick it had been playing. The callers weren't imitations. They were rehearsals. The broadcast was a loop of what I would say if I kept engaging, measured by 13-second delays. If I let it have my voice at the right overlap, it would graft me into whatever the highway was when it was alone. Maybe it needed a spine of voices. Maybe we were fence posts in a fence that kept something out or in. I had no way to know, only the certainty of that cold coin smell and the mouth motif ringing like a bell. I made a rule: close mouths, break lines. I put my thumb hard against the speaker cone until it crackled. I clicked the CB to squelch. I turned the AM knob gently past 1313. Even though it didn't exist, I did not speak. The kid watched me with wet eyes. He started to cry with his mouth closed, in the way that looked almost broke me. The countdown ran to 1 and then to none. It did not say 0. It said hush. For a long breath, nothing. The other truck did not disappear. The keychain swung and tapped the steering column in a rhythm that synced to my heart and then exceeded it by one beat. The map in my lap added a third circle, tiny inside town around the street where my ex had moved. That almost made me lose the rule. I almost called her name. The radio knew. It purred. It played the voicemail I had left her the night she patched with new words. I wanted to say no, and that is the whole point of a trap like this. It needs you to open a door you think you're closing. I put both hands on the wheel and kept my mouth pressed shut until my teeth ached and the blood in my lips became a sound. Something changed. The air warmed. The black ice smell went watery. The 13 marks on the trees lost one line, leaving 11 crossed, 2 clean. The hazard lights on the other truck stopped breathing and began blinking like normal again. The kid dared to look outside and said he's gone, meaning the feeling, not a person. A silence arrived that was not a look. It was an absence. We backed carefully, and the service road did not fight us. The freshener swung once and then hung dead. At the highway, the flowers looked whiter. There were only 12. We drove in real time again. The GPS stopped being stubborn. The kid's phone vibrated with a backlog of messages. He read one and went pale. It was from a number he didn't know, just an audio file of a woman trying his name like a combination. He blocked it. He did not unblock it later. Maybe he moved away. I never saw him again. At the yard, Donnie had jokes until I told him about the van and its stickers and the frost inside. He didn't laugh then. He said he'd been home. He showed me a selfie with a timestamp that didn't help. In the morning, the supervisor asked why I hadn't located the repeat customer. I said I had found a duplicate asset and brought back evidence. He laughed and asked if I wanted time off. I said no. That is pride again. We're a tether. I'm not sure what reputation I have left. Somebody filed a clip of me talking to the radio into a local forum and added captions. People think I make it up for tips. Someone else uploaded an audio of me from that night with my voice delayed behind itself. If you listen with headphones, they say you can hear a third version under both. I haven't listened. I did not open that door. I didn't rescue anybody. I came home with a plastic flower on the passenger floor that I did not pick up, and that did not smell like anything at all. I threw it away and found it in my truck again 2 days later, a quiet enough trick that I had to admire it. On the third day, I put the flower on the dash and told myself it didn't mean anything. If you have ever done that, you know exactly how loud that kind of silence can be. My ex called once at 2:13 in the afternoon. She hung up before I answered. Later, there was a voicemail. She said she had almost answered me late that night, but when she put the phone to her ear, she heard me already there, say her name with my mouth, but not how I say it. She cried a little and then said she hoped I was okay. She did not mention moving back. She did not mention the keychain, but I found the same pewter anchor in the cup holder I never use, cool as a coin. I asked her if she had lost it, and she texted back a picture of hers. She hadn't. Sometimes, if the air is very still and the bugs are quiet, the AM band in my cab slips toward 1313 without landing, like a compass dragging to a magnet under the floor. The freshener is calmer now, but I have learned that its stillness is not always a gift. It is sometimes a breath being held. I still pass mile marker 13. It's on the best route between two places that almost never belong to me. The flowers are 12 now, plus one that is always somewhere else. It ends up on my passenger floor. It ends up in my glove box next to the map that now has a fourth circle in a neighborhood I don't like to drive. If you listen to me at night, if you call in and I do not answer immediately, know this. I am counting. I am letting your words slide past my mouth so they do not catch. If your phone shows 113 when you know it isn't, do me a favor. Close your mouth and count with me. We will make a rule out of number and pretend it was always a rule, and maybe we will both get home. And if you ever hear a voice that sounds like mine from a radio with no station, and it says your name wrong even once, even kindly, even the way a loved one might tease it, turn the dial gently past a number that's not there. Keep your mouth closed. Let the night carry the sound by itself. Because the night has a throat, friend. I think I have felt it. I think it nearly learned mine. Story 2. The mirror keeper of Ravenswood rest stop, they call it Ravenswood, because crows won't land there after midnight, and I used to laugh at that, until the night my reflection kept wiping after I put the rag down, and the squeegee squeal went on without breath like it didn't need lungs at all. If you have ever cleaned tile at 2 in the morning, you know the cold that climbs through the soles of your shoes and sets up in your knees. The air tastes like lemon and pennies. Fluorescents buzz and sometimes stutter, like they're trying not to say a name. The vents hum with the building's breath. I liked the sound because it filled the space where my thoughts would try to plug in. That night, the hum carried a tune that nibbled at my memory, a lullaby played backward, and I asked myself whether mirrors keep different time when no one looks. My name is Nia, and I work the overnight at Ravenswood rest stop off I-87. It is not glamorous. The pay is steady if you ignore deductions that sting. I keep a checklist clipped to the cart and a timer on my phone. If a manager sees a smear in the morning, he docks the shift, and he's the kind of man who says it's not personal right before he makes it personal. I need 3 more months for benefits. My little brother is 16 and needs braces, and besides, our building has a black mold problem the landlord calls a feature. So I aim to move us, and spotless bathrooms are my currency, even when the sticky tape on my supply cart says do not clean after 2:03 in somebody's rushed handwriting. I want to tell you I obeyed, but that would be a different person, not me. I don't leave streaks. Streaks say you gave up. Streaks say you didn't care. That night, I started in the women's because the buses tend to arrive closer to 2:15 and I like the hard part behind me. Stall 3's mirror has a hairline crack like a tiny key notch. I always make sure it doesn't snag cloth. I wipe top left down across like a gentle Z and watch my hand move cleanly. When I lowered the rag to squirt a last mist, the reflection of my hand kept wiping 2 more passes. If that has ever happened to you, I bet you shocked a laugh out of your throat, the kind that leaves a bruise. I told myself it was exhaustion and reached for the squeegee. The rubber's squeal went short, then long, too long, as if something thin and hungry dragged the last note out with its teeth. That was when a motion sensor soap dispensed a pale puff even though I was 2 feet away. The lemon cleaner smelled like a bandage, and the puff trembled once, then settled, leaving a comma on the counter that I didn't like the look of. I could have left, called a manager, let him tell me I was dramatic. Or I could get my time card signed, my checklist stamped, and be one night closer to benefits. If you've ever had to choose between your sense and your rent, you already know which way I turned. The men's room kept the joke going. When I waved at the mirror to check for streaks, my reflection responded half a beat late, then half a beat early, like the timing on a bad duet. I set my phone timer for 2:10 and it blinked 2:06, then flickered back to 2:02. I tapped the glass like that would matter. The faucet ran cold when my hands were dry and stopped when I put them under. The vents hummed that backward lullaby again, and I almost sang along just to prove I wasn't spooked. A bus shushed into the lot at 1:55, white and foggy with travel, and then it didn't. The sound pulled away like someone rewound it, leaving my ears a little numb. Still, wet footprints appeared on the tile, marching from the hallway to stall 3. I followed them with my mop and the soap dispensers. All 5 in a row gave a single polite spit in sequence, like a line of hand puppets welcoming a dignitary I couldn't see. The vents breathed in, the lemon stung. I took my phone out to record proof for the morning so I would sound sane, and in the screen I saw another me, standing one reflection deeper behind the surface, with her head tilted like she was trying to make out my humming. I lowered the phone, and the other me wasn't there in the naked mirror. If you ever want to know how fast your heart can become an alarm, try seeing yourself where you aren't. I thought about the kids the barista mentioned earlier, the ones who set up tripods and rest stops and fake glitch videos with fog pens and freezer spray. I found a tripod wedged by the trash can, duct tape on its feet so it wouldn't skid. A slim camera hung from it, red light blinking. The SD slot was full. I popped the card into my phone with a little adapter because curiosity is stronger than fear when you think someone is playing you. The footage showed the empty bathroom and the line of sinks. When I walked in a frame in the past, the audio dulled and the backward lullaby turned my name into a shape that bumped my teeth from inside. Then there were missing frames each time I said my name to the camera, like the world looked away out of politeness. On the track, lightly under the hum, a deeper breath answered. The hairline crack in stall 3 lengthened in the video, not forward but rotational, as if something on the other side had turned a notch and was testing whether the door would give. I went hard and fast after that. Sometimes speed is a courage you borrow from yourself. I wiped baseboards and polished sinks and found glittering crystals along the wall, a line I'd mistaken for construction dust. I swept it up and it stung my fingers like salt. The note on my cart said, "Do not clean after 2:03. I checked my watch. 2:06. The clock on the wall said 2:03. The checklist on my cart reflected 2:03 in the mirror, even though it was face down. I told myself I didn't believe in clocks that weren't mine and scrubbed anyway, because a manager can't dock you for superstition. The intake that came from the mirrors was not loud. Loud would have been a gift. It was barely a breath, but it was deep, the way a basement breath might be if a basement could feel relief. The soap dispensers all hissed once like they agreed. The motion faucet ran a clear stream by itself and kept running so long I had to turn the water off under the sink. The vent's lullaby found the right backward rhythm for my name and let it roll, wrong and familiar and close. When I tried the highway side door to get air, the lock pinched and stayed. My manager's number went to a loop that chirped "you have reached" over and over without reaching. The radio on my belt crackled without chatter. A smiley face sticker on it watched me like a shut eye. Those buses that hadn't arrived were still late, and the lot sat open like a mouth that didn't know whether to call in or spit out. The tripod kids were nowhere. I found their prop fog pen on the trash, but the line of crystals along the baseboard wasn't prop. When I left it alone and did a loop around the building, it had rebuilt itself bright as frost. I knelt and put a fingertip near it, and the crystals sweated like breath in cold air. Then I did the stupid thing that looks smart when you have a boss. I scrubbed the lines spotless to show off my standards, and the bathroom exhaled in an old, damp way, like something had held in a breath until it hurt and finally let go. Stall 3 fogged by itself. Someone had written my name backward on the glass. The hook of the N turned wrong like a grin. The key-shaped crack ticked, not sound, but a feeling against my teeth. I backed away, rag in hand. Such a professional reflex, you would have been proud of me if you didn't know me. My watch said 2:09. The clock said 2:03. The checklist was due at 2:10 on the dot, or I would hear about it until August. The legend the barista told me came back in somebody else's voice. Years ago, a girl tried to trap a man's face in the rest stop mirrors by aligning them just so. She thought if she shut 2 reflections against each other like doors, whatever looked would stay. They say she did it wrong and caught something that knew how to wait. People call it the mirror keeper, like it's a joke about a museum guard. But guard isn't the right word. Keeper is, in the way a jar can keep a wasp. I tried to prove I was braver than a story by finishing stall 3. When the rag touched the fog name, the motion soaked down the line, fired like a salute, pop, 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 and the hairline crack unbent into a thin, precise keyhole. If you have ever felt a room tilt, not your body but the room, you know the way my stomach slid. The mirror across from stall 3, the big one over the sinks, returned my face with a glow that didn't belong to the light. In the big mirror, I stood alone. In stall 3, I had company. The other me stood 1 beat behind and hummed the backward lullaby with a mouth that didn't open enough to make sound. And somehow the not open made more sound than open could. The tripod camera, still recording, showed something else too. The space between the big mirror and stall 3 had gone slightly thicker, like heat above asphalt, except it was cool, too cool, the kind that makes nickel taste on your tongue. I moved left in the big mirror, and the other me didn't move in stall 3 until I stopped. The keyhole ticked in my teeth again, a pressure like the moment before a combination clicks. There are choices you can undo and choices that are a one-way staircase. I had about a minute left if my watch meant anything. The checklist looked at me with its stupid boxes. The manager's face lived behind each one. I had cleaned the salt line, and that felt like erasing a thin chalk circle drawn by someone who knew more than jokes. My name hung backward and wrong on the glass. My brother needed his brace consult next week. I erased the fog name to a shine. Every soap dispenser along the wall hissed at me like something pleased. The faucet ran again without help. The vents hummed louder, not the motor, but the lullaby threading through the motor's whine like a thief through a crowd, and the backward syllables made my name into a key that might fit the notch. The keyhole rotated, barely, and the space between the mirrors deepened, a corridor not by distance but by angle, a trick of facing reflections that hooked at the end and opened like a smile. That is where the keeper lives, not in glass, but in the algebra between 2 surfaces that form a hall. The old legend had a true piece inside the joke. Someone had tried to use mirrors like doors and left the latches turned. The keeper keeps the space open by practicing names backward until they match the latch. The big mirror showed only me. Stall 3 showed 2. The corridor between them held the hum, and the hum breathed in when I breathed out, polite as a clerk. My brother's voice came from somewhere further down that angle, saying sis like he had as a child. He asked me if I was almost done, if I could come home, if I could stop working so late the way he had asked me last week when the super sprayed fake bleach, and the mold laughed. I pressed both palms flat to the counter because my legs had a new idea I didn't like. The squeegee lay on the edge, its rubber lip bright with lemon. I needed to break reflections without breaking glass. Matte surfaces shut corridors. That's a law you feel before you know. I grabbed the bin of brown paper towels and slapped them across the sink mirror, quick strips, wetting them with the Rogue faucet, so they stuck. The big mirror clouded into a paper patchwork. The stall mirror stayed clear, hall still open, the other me humming one beat behind like a polite echo that had learned impatience. The motion soap fired at empty air, once, twice, in a path that crossed from the big mirror's edge to stall 3. That showed the keeper's route. If I admit it, I aimed a strip of wet paper where it spat. The towel stuck to nothing, and then to something I hated to feel my hand touch. Cold that pressed back with a shape. Not a hand, a bend, a corner, a hinge. I didn't say my name when my brother's voice reached my throat. I wanted to. If you have ever had to keep your mouth still when it is the only part of you a presence wants, you know how the world becomes teeth. The paper dulled the big mirror into matte. The corridor shivered. The keyhole in stall 3 had no partner now. Only a latch turned toward blank. The other me flickered once and held. I needed to steal its light. I grabbed the lemon spray and misted the stall glass until the scent cut like citrus metal. Then I pressed the flat of the squeegee slow to the crack, not scraping glass, but laying rubber to reflection, and pulled. The squeal went long, and then longer as if the room was bigger than the room. And when it seemed like the sound should have run out of breath, something on the other side let go in a small, insulted way. The stall mirror fogged without my exhale. On it, in awkward letters like a child learning, someone wrote my name the right way. My hand moved to wipe it by habit, and I made myself stop. I let the name sit. The keeper needed it clear to speak it. I was not going to be helpful. The Vince lullaby tried one last shape of my name, and then pulled back into metal hum. The motion soap spent itself and dripped pathetic tears on the counter. The faucet died. The clock on the wall advanced to 2:11 like a kid, pretending it had been walking the whole time. My watch ticked without smugness. My checklist had a wet fingerprint on it that wasn't mine at an angle human fingers don't like. I taped a big stupid sign over the sinks. Do not clean after 2:03. I wrote it in block letters and then wrote it again in case someone who didn't believe me needed redundancy. I pulled the duct tape off the tripod legs and stuck a strip over the hairline cracks notch where it made my teeth feel wrong. Then I put more paper towels over stall 3 and shut the door. Paper isn't pretty, but paper remembers hands and punishes light. I walked the outside in the cool and watched for crows. 2 landed on the lamppost and preened like they were waiting for a bus. I felt silly, and then I felt relief, and then I felt the way you feel when you say a rule out loud and hear your voice obey it. I breathed until lemon turned into air again. In the morning, my manager ran his finger under the paper and sked. He told me the state tourist board didn't like signs. I told him I didn't like complaints from people whose reflections were too punctual, and he gave me that look, the one that says he'll keep an eye on my hours. I stayed. I need the job. I made a new rule for my rounds. I leave the thin crystal line at the baseboards alone after 2:03. I tape if I have to. I let Matt win at night. I do not say my name out loud in rooms that can say it back with even a little lag. At home, I found a travel mirror in my bag that wasn't mine. The kind hotels give and hope you forget. A bead of water sat in the center. I watched it with more patience than you think I have. It didn't fall. It climbed back along the glass like a spider going home. I put the mirror face down and left it that way on the highest shelf. Some nights, I hear the paper towels I taped at work wrinkle gently, the way paper does when it dries. That's how I know the corridor still looks for a partner. My brother left me a voicemail at 2:03 the next night. Not late, not early. He asked why I answered twice when he called, first like I was in a hallway, and second from our kitchen. I didn't answer the question. I told him to keep his bathroom mirror turned to face the wall. I told him lemon cleaner takes off anything, which is a lie, but we need lies that act like salt. If you've ever set a rule because you need it to be true, you understand me perfectly. And if you ever find yourself at Ravenswood after midnight and you see my paper towels like ugly bandages over the mirror, leave them. If you feel the urge to tidy, to make things gleam, to erase lines someone else drew, fight it. Perfection is a door in some places. Mess is a lock. Keep the lock. Story 3. The basement door that knocks back. I have a way I knock on doors when I work a house at night. 3 short taps and a pause like a little drum roll, and the basement door in the Carroll place knocked the same rhythm back at me before my knuckles left the wood. The smell of the place was damp concrete and old chalk, the kind of cold that comes up through your shoes and takes the elevator to your knees. A cheap wind-up timer clicked on the drop cloth to track the drying coat. Somewhere a draft slid through a keyhole and cooled my teeth. I told myself it was a pipe settling, or a raccoon in the coal chute, or a story trying to be brave. But the rhythm was mine, and it came with the exact pause I always make, which felt like someone had practiced me by heart, didn't it? My name is Mara. I paint foreclosed houses on the night shift because nobody rents noise during daylight on our block, and the money stretches farther when you stack the weird hours. Jay is the contractor who hands me keys and warnings and pays cash because he trusts what I do with trim. He said this one was a quick flip with a bonus if I finished before 5. I said I could hit 2 coats by 4 and still get home to set up my dad's nebulizer. Asthma gets ruder with age, and a bonus is the difference between a spare and a breakdown. If you've ever juggled meds, you know. The Carroll place was pre-war with pins in the wrong places. The fuse box labels were written backward, not sloppily, precisely, like someone had copied them in a mirror and never fixed it. The basement door was solid old pine, 3 hinges, 1 screw missing at the middle hinge hole, as if somebody had rehung it and left the last decision for later. Chalk tally marks climbed the frame to eye level and stopped as if the last person had run out of courage or chalk. The coal chute in the wall was bricked over with a neatness that felt recent. When I put my palm to it, the cold was more than cold. It was the absence of room temperature, like a breath that forgot your side of the air. Jay texted to say old pipes bang, like someone kicking the house from inside. Water hammer, he said. Bleed air in the lines, and it calms. But the water had been shut off at the curb for months, and the meter in the kitchen looked like a dead eye. Still, people like reasons, and I am people, so I tried his reason on like a jacket and ignored how it pinched. I papered the stairs, taped baseboards, set the wind-up timer to 20 for a quick tack, and did what I always do before a long set-alone. I knocked 3 times on the basement door and said, "Anybody here besides me?" It is a joke to mark the start, a ritual more than a question. The knocks that came back were mine, not loud, polite like a tenant answering a landlord. I laughed and told the air, "Okay, cute, because you say you don't scare that easily even if you do." Then the timer ticked a touch too fast and then a touch too slow, like a beginner trying to match a song. I painted anyway. If you give fear a job, it sometimes shuts up. The rollers sang against wallboard and the cheap lights warmed my neck. Every so often the timer clicked wrong and I tapped it with the butt of the brush and the click snapped back to right as if pleased to obey. I finished the first wall, stood back to judge the wet sheen, and heard 3 short taps behind me that ended in a lighter 4th. I told myself it was the brush in the tray settling. And then I looked at the tray, and the brush lay still, balanced like a gymnast. The missing hinge screw rolled from nowhere and stopped at the toe of my boot. I did not like how that felt, so I gave myself a chore to drown it, the best trick I know. I filled a cup with primer and walked the frame to seal old nail holes. The chalk tallies wouldn't take paint. The pigment slid off them like rain off wax. I pressed harder, and the tallies felt under the brush the way scars feel under skin, a lift invisible until you touch it. I counted. 11. The room found that number and held it. The timer chirped, and I reset for 20, turning the dial until the spring tugged back with its little metal sigh. I told the basement it was getting on my nerves and what I hoped was a friendly voice, and the door answered with 2 taps. Friendly too. I took my phone out and recorded a test. I said, "Knock when I knock," and tapped the pattern I use on cabinets when I am looking for hollow spaces. On playback, the knocks came before my own, 3 seconds early in the audio track, delicate as a rehearsal. I turned the volume down, and the tick of the timer took that quiet personally and grew louder, proud to be the only sound. I tried the fuse for the stair light, and the label set up. It killed the basement instead and sent the rest of the house into a dull, humming gray that made the hair on my arms teach my skin about static. That was when the chalk tallies added a line without my hand. I saw it happen. No drama. One new mark. 12. My name felt suddenly wrong in my mouth, like a word you say too many times until it turns into shape and nonsense. And I told the basement to knock it off because sometimes talking out loud pins things down. The door obliged me with a soft knock. I could feel more than hear, like tapping through bone. I opened the door. Of course I did. Curiosity isn't a cat in me. It is a dog that brings back everything and expects praise. The stairs down were clean. That bothered me more than dust would have. Dust is a diary. Clean is a lie. I took the work light and went down, shoes loud on wood that drank your footsteps and kept them. The space under the stairs was tighter than it should be, a strange void framed by the studs and the backside of the coal chute wall. There was an inch of air between the back of the door and the brick, a narrow service gap like a throat too slim to swallow, and a cold draft breathed up it with the smell of matches struck in a damp room. The knocks came from that hidden space, not the room proper. When I put my ear near, careful not to get splinters, the sound sent my breath back at me with not quite my temperature. I said, "Is someone stuck?" like a fool, because I wanted a recorded reason the way you want a receipt when you return guilt. The answer was a knock that matched the cadence I use when I am trying to be gentle at tenants' doors. The one that says your landlord has news, but not an emergency. News, not emergency. The timer upstairs said otherwise, ticking faster like it had reached a chorus and needed me for harmony. From upstairs, a new set of knocks joined the first. The same rhythm, shifted by a heartbeat, like a round you sing in school. Down here, up there, a little off, a little on. I had the stupid thought that if I clapped, it would clap back, and then scolded myself because I'm not a child, and then forgave myself because fear makes children of all of us, doesn't it? I tried calling Jay. His number looped to a cheerful recorded woman who said his name like a question and never gave me a beep. The neighbor's porch light across the alley died like someone pinched it. My car chirped in the driveway and then gave up. Old houses do this, I told myself. Old towns do too. They work on inherited timing and ignore your schedule like a cat. I looked at the old tag wired to the basement knob, the one I had ignored earlier because tags are for inspectors. It was yellowed and said in stamped letters, "Return on third knock." Return what? To whom? From where? The timer ticked like a heart too fast and too pleased at its speed. I put my knuckles to the wood and did the thing I should not have. I answered the third knock with my pattern like I always do, 3 taps and a pause. The answer came under my hand from the service gap before I finished the last tap, quick as a cousin stealing your punchline. The wind through the keyhole cooled my teeth and carried a sulfur tang that made me think of churches and matches that won't light when your hands are damp. The chalk tallies upstairs were now 13. I did not watch them change. I felt the number arrive the way you feel a name spoken from behind you. You want a reason to stop. You wait for a sign that is bigger than fear. What I got instead was the fuse box purring in that reversed handwriting and the labels promising up when they meant down. The house had been rehung, like the door, like a suit someone tailored inside out. That explained too much and not enough. I took the missing hinge screw because it was there and because I collect leftovers out of habit. I put it in my pocket and told myself that counted as control. I needed a truth about the coal chute. Raccoons don't carry cold on their breath like that. Animals don't learn rhythm. People do, and other things that listen harder than people. The brickwork was too clean on the inside of that gap, like hands had slid along it recently and polished the grit away. I pressed my palm to the seam, and it felt warmer where my hand was, not like heat transferring, but like something timing me through the mortar, measuring my pulse against the timer upstairs. Do not let a house measure you. That is a rule I know now. The old tag said return on third knock, and rules like that belong to people who learn the hard way. I don't like being told, and I don't like being wrong, and I wanted the bonus, and I wanted my dad to breathe without that sound he makes when a room feels too small. So I followed the rule because following felt like action. I counted the next knocks out loud, so I wouldn't miss. 1, 2, 3. I answered. The timer's tick slipped into my heartbeat and stayed. Like a metronome you cannot turn off once it starts to lead. What I am about to tell you is going to sound like a trick of hearing, but I think you will feel the shape of it. In the narrow space between the basement door and the coal chute, sound did not move the way sound moves in a room. It moved like light in mirrors facing each other, back and forth in a corridor that gets smaller and smaller. My knocks went in, became almost knocks, and returned early, as if the corridor had counted me first, like I was an answer it had been waiting to ask. The chalk tallies did not mark nights. They marked returns. Each set of knocks that matched made a line. I had just made 13. Lucky for some, not for me. The fuse labeled up blinked the basement dark and the upstairs brighter, so the two rhythms could answer in clear lanes. The missing hinge screw mattered because if the door was rehung to open backward, then the pressure would push in, not out. Everything in the house was reversed by decision, not decay. Someone had tried to flip the geometry so the knocks would stay behind the wood, because the real threat wasn't a thing in the basement. It was the act of answer matching answer until the U on this side and the U on the other side are the same speed. If you have ever walked with a friend and tried to match steps and felt the moment one of you becomes the other's echo, you know the heat that came into my face. The solution came like a bad taste. Rhythm is a door. Locks need counts. If you break count, the door sulks. But count breaking is not forgetting. It is refusing. The timer in my hand clicked smugly. I raised it and slammed it once against the jamb, then again, and on the third hit the spring snapped and the tick died like a throat cut without blood. Silence is different when a room has been learning your noise. It leans. The knocks in the service gap paused. The upstairs knocks paused. The coal chute breathed out, sulfur and cool like someone holding a match near your cheek, but not striking. I took the chalk and made a wrong tally, a tick across the others that did not line up. Not erasing, contaminating. I smeared a thumb through the line so the set could not be even. Then I returned the missing hinge screw to the hole and left it crooked so the door would never close perfectly, not to sound, not to pressure, not to timing. Imperfect is ugly. Imperfect is safe. The answer came late for the first time. Not early, not perfect. Late. It knocked my pattern and missed the pause. It learned wrong. I laughed, and it tried to laugh back and stumbled over the rhythm of human breath. The house hates laughter the way a metronome hates jazz. I opened the basement door wide, so it couldn't push against anything, and I opened the back door to the alley and let the draft go through. The sulfur thinned. The cold became regular. I did not fix the timer. I let it sit broken and dumb on the drop cloth. I finished the trim with the radio low and no beat. I sang without meter on purpose. I painted sloppier than I like and left brushstrokes in corners where only I would know. The fuse labels stayed wrong, and I let them be wrong because wrong had kept me. I did not look at the chalk tallies again. Sometimes not looking is the only lock you have time to throw. I lost the bonus because the corners were not showroom, and Jay is a man who counts to the penny. My dad breathed easy that night anyway, because sometimes the air is a gift you do not owe to a paycheck. He asked why I came in humming nothing. I said the house had tried to teach me a song I did not want, and I chose silence instead. He laughed until the laugh turned to cough and then to laugh again, and I watched his shoulders even out. I found the missing hinge screw in my pocket when I changed. I swear to you I had put it back, crooked, a little anchor in the wood. This one was warm in my palm, as if it had been held all night by something that doesn't know warm from held. I put on the shelf by the door and told myself I would throw it out in the morning. The radiator in our apartment knocks in winter. Old buildings do that. You can write it off. Tonight it knocked my name wrong, then right, then waited. I did not answer. I put a little chalk line on the baseboard under the radiator and then smudged it with my thumb so it would never match anything again. I broke the kitchen egg timer when it tried to fill the silence with the old tick. I stood with my dad and listened to his breath and timed myself to nothing at all. If you come into a house like the Carroll place and the fuse box labels lie a little prettier than they should, and the hinges argue with the door, and the chalk refuses paint like a scar refuses re-injury, do me a favor. Do not let the house learn your knock. Do not give it a heartbeat it can mimic. Sing off key. Tap out of time. Leave one brushstroke crooked where only you will see and call it style. Imperfect is a lock most doors do not know how to pick. And if something knocks the way you do, with your precise pause and your small flourish at the end, that is not a friend. That is not a stranger either. That is a corridor between two surfaces trying to make you its hinge. break the rhythm before it breaks you. And if you hear your own knock from somewhere that should not know it yet, leave. Do not say your name. Do not count out loud. Let silence be the tool you forgot you owned. Story 4. The whistler under the overpass. There's a 3-note whistle I use when I work nights. A small descending thing that carries over engines without sounding like a siren. And the first time it happened under Overpass 47, the concrete finished my breath for me and exhaled the last note in my voice from a place where no mouth could be. Creosote heat from the rail yard across the river mixed with cold mist off the water and made the kind of air that tastes like pennies. Road salt grit bit through my vest and found skin. Sodium lights jittered to their own pulse, pausing just long enough to make me wonder if it was my blink. I set red flares and watched the smoke pull into threads, then curve like someone had pinched them between 2 fingers I could not see. If an overpass learns your whistle once, what does it do to own the rest? They call me Lena on the radio, Unit 4 when the supervisor is listening. I am 34 with a provisional slot at DOT, Incident Response. The rule on probation is simple. Make clean calls, do not add drama, and never be late to a lane closure. I am closing the westbound slow lane tonight for a crack inspection. My partner Malik takes the far side with cones and a smile that makes most drivers behave. We keep time with whistles when radios get chatty. I need the shift. I need 90 clean days. I need the check for the rent that does not forgive. I spread my cones like orange prayers and check the chalk diagram the day crew left under the north girder. It was an old hobo symbol, a circle with a short tail, mark meaning safe, if quiet. Whoever drew it believed in rules. I try to honor it without eye rolling. I did my first whistle to let Malik know my row was set and heard the echo come from inside the shadows under the span. Same 3 notes, same timing, as if the concrete had teeth and was chewing them. I stopped mid-exhale. The echo added a 4th note. Low, soft, like someone saying my name the way a parent says it when they want you to come home. I did not add a 4th note. I have never added a 4th note. Across the lane, a crushed traffic cone lay like a collapsed lung. The bite marks along the rim were too even for a tire. Each divot equidistant. I ran my hand over them and felt a narrowness as if the air itself had teeth there. The scanner on my shoulder, quiet until then, spoke with a calm male voice. Stand by, it said. Then again, stand by. Then once more as if the repetition was policy and not appetite. Malik chirped my earpiece. Copy set. Your side good, L. I raised my fingers to my whistle and stopped. The wind at my ankles was still, but the orange mesh of my vest tugged like a toddler had pinched it. I turned slowly. No one behind me. Red flare, smoke still curled, then leaned, then flowed toward one drainage seam where salt had crusted white. If you've ever watched a dog put its head to a cracked door and breathe in to see what moves, you know the feeling that went through me. I towed the crushed cone. It rolled and tapped my boot and kept rolling until it bumped the chalk symbol. The circle faded under the scrape. I stepped back across it without thinking, and the whistle came again from the dark with my shape of breath inside it. I told myself kids hide Bluetooth speakers under bridges. Someone had left a battery pack taped to a beam last month to spook drivers and upload the squeals. It happens. The rumor travels quicker than the citation. My hand went to my kit and found the cheap tin dog whistle I keep from a prior call. I had bagged it as evidence once, laughed with Malik about pranksters, and forgotten to file. It vibrated in the plastic even though it made no tone. Malik radioed. Hey, why are you whistling my way? I heard you twice. Once the right side, once mine. I told him a hold. I had not whistled. He came back with a little static that sounded like breath. Our safety app chimed and flashed the audit pin. Supervisor doing a surprise check at 2:15. I had 23 minutes. There was a freight schedule card in my pocket marked with pencil. 212 circled. The card belonged to the inspector. He liked to plan the way noise arrived. I walked the ribs of the underpass, listening. My boots found the seams. The whistle came when my exhale thinned. It waited where my breath could be borrowed. The radio scanner again. Stand by, stand by, stand by. 3 times like I owed it air. I held my breath on purpose, and the whistle warbled once, then faded, then returned small and patient as if counting. I did not like being counted by a thing I could not see. Under the girder, someone had taped a plastic speaker to a brace with gray gaffer. I almost laughed from relief. The red light on its side was dead. I pried the tape. The speaker was cold the way stones are cold, not the way batteries are cold. Dust sat even inside the grill. I shook it and heard nothing. I wanted to show Malik and feel silly. I wanted to tell the bridge inspector on my clipboard that we had found the mouth and it had no power to speak. The whistle answered my wanting by adding the fourth note again, shaping the last syllable like a hand pushing the back of my head. Lena with the end laid long. My phone camera caught flare, smoke bending toward the drainage seam. I took 2 photos, one north, one south. In both, the smoke curved like a ribbon drawn through a ring. My vest tugged again. My earpiece chirped nothing. When I looked at the time, it stayed 2:12 through 2 blinks. I crouched at the seam and held my hand near the opening. Air moved as if presence has a temperature. Warmer in my palm, cooler when I withdrew, warm again when I went back. A breath learning a mouth. The cone bag Malik had left on his approach beeped its little timer to remind him to check in. It beeped again, then it quit. His voice on radio thinned. "L, I'm not getting you. L, do the 3. L, do the 3 now." I whistled on reflex. 3 notes, quick, clean. Every flare around me guttered. The concrete under my palm inhaled the last echo like a lung finishing my sentence. The scanner said nothing, then said stand by again, as if pleased. Sound makes wind if you do it with the right throat. The freight horn called from a mile out, too soon for the mark on the card, and the bridge answered with a low tone I felt more than heard like a bass played in sidebone. I did not blow the dog whistle. I put it in my pocket. Some part of me believed if I put any mouth to any mouth, I would not choose the note that came out. The chalk circle where I had stepped was smeared now to a coma. I had broken somebody's quiet. Red herring or not, the symbol had felt like boundary. People who travel under bridges leave you rules if they can. Safe if quiet, it said. I had not been quiet. Malik's voice went small. "L, I hear you on both sides. It is not funny. L, say something." Then the channel was breath through cloth. I crossed the lane and looked for him through the barrier gaps. His vest should have caught every light. Instead, I saw a bright bag of cones pitched near the column base, and no Malik. The bag was moving, not sliding, moving in little jerks toward the seam, like the air had a hand in it. Choice is often a staircase, up or down, and both have no landing to turn on. If I retreated to the truck and called the supervisor, Malik might walk blind into flow while checking the closure. If I entered the shade and pulled the bag and yelled, I might feed the thing my breath with my words. The freight horn bawled, its warning 2 bridges away. The 212 circle on the card scraped my finger through the plastic sleeve, as if to say, trains keep time even when people do not. I went low and fast under the span, pocketed the dog whistle, and stepped back inside the chalk boundary with my mouth shut. I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth the way my grandmother taught me when swimming in cold water, so you do not gasp. I moved with my breath held, which makes the world turn glassy. My hand found the cone bag, and my other hand found a seam like a keyhole that ran inward farther than it seemed. Cold breathed out, warm breathed in. The 4th note tested itself in my ear like a draft after a drink. The whistle tried to make my throat finish. It pulled like the last tug of sleep. I jammed the tin whistle into the seam and cupped a cone over it to make a chamber wrong for music. I sparked a flare and pushed it upright near the mouth so the smoke fed that bad little organ I had made. The whistle came confused through the cone. It tried to find itself and found itself again and again in the throat I had offered. I did not breathe. I did not whistle. I counted heartbeats with my eyes open and used the burn on my fingers from the flare to keep from listening to the wrong song. The freight hit the span and the whole structure sang. That sound could have scattered me. It could have washed everything I was into a low red note nobody would pin to a name. I learned something then. The thing in the bridge was not a ghost like a person without skin. It was the shape air learns in tuned cavities. It was borrowed mouths and remembered patterns. It had used a taped voice somewhere, a scanner cadence, my own 3-note call, and threaded them into a lure tight as twine. The cone rim bite marks told me where the throat narrowed. The chalk symbol told me silence was a boundary. The freight card told me when hunted best. The scanner's 3 standby lined up like steps. And that 4th note was the hook. Finish it and you belong to the organ. Refuse it and it does not know who you are. I looked toward the far side for Malik and saw his sleeve hooked on a bolt head where he had slipped. He was folded, breathing, trying to talk into a dead radio. I shook my head and put one finger to my lips. He understood the shape, if not the reason. I dragged the cone bag backward with one hand and kept the other on the cone over the tin whistle. The flare's smoke thickened, pointing into the hollow. The sound chased itself, hunting its own echo in the wrong cavity, until it wobbled like a singer who has lost the pitch. It tried the 4th note again, softer, angrier, and the cone coughed. I did not let my body celebrate. I kept my tongue pressed up and my nose working in small sips. I backed us toward the chalk mark and re-chalked the circle with the heel of my glove. I put Malik inside it and set my last flare like a candle at a cheap altar. On the scanner, something tried to copy Malik's check-in and got his name wrong. Malik, it said, too much air on the wrong syllable. It made me want to answer and tell it the right way so badly my chest hurt. I waited until the freight passed and the bridge let its stored breath out in a long, unmusical sigh. The flare snapped on itself and died to a coal. The cone over the whistle stopped trembling. The seam drew in a little. Not closed. Not gone. Smaller. We got up slow. Malik put his hands on his knees and swore once in a clean line. He tried to laugh. He could not. I walked him tight along the barrier to his truck and made him drink water. I made myself do the same because ritual is a bridge back to yourself. The supervisor audit pin never registered. At 2:16 the app woke and said I had missed my check. I took a photo of the Bluetooth speaker taped to the girder and the freight schedule card in my sleeve and the chalk circle and the crushed cone with bite marks. None of it would look the way it had felt. Malik said, I heard you on both sides at once, like you were coordinating with yourself. I told him to keep his mouth closed if he heard a 4th note anywhere, especially if it sounded like help. He nodded like a man who files rules inside bone. He told me he had thought of stepping over the chalk, and then something had pulled his elbow, and he could not quite remember how he caught the bolt. He thanked me, and I told him to buy me coffee when the sun existed again. I filed the blandest report of my life. Lane closure partial. False speaker discovered. Freight early. Flare self-extinguished in wind. Inspector note. Drainage seam needs reseal. I did not write that the bridge had tried to learn my breath, like a password. I did not write that I had felt it fall a little out of tune when I fed it its own echo. I did not write that refusing a note might be one of the only kinds of courage I truly own. Back in my apartment 3 nights later, my radiator popped the way old radiators do, and then gave a tiny 3-note descent that stopped 1 note shy. I set my teeth and waited. The bead of condensation under the cold window quivered, as if something had pursed lips there. It did not finish. The cheap tin whistle sat on my table, scuffed cone ring still faintly printed on it, and I told myself I would turn it in at the evidence desk in the morning. I told myself that twice. There's a chalk mark near the heat now, a circle with a tail, drawn small and smudged with a thumb so it can never be perfect. Safe if quiet. I did not tell my landlord. I did not tell Malik I drew it. I did tell myself the truth. I keep in my vest like a badge no one issued me. Some places are pipe organs that forgot they were bridges. Some nights your breath tries to belong to something that does not have a mouth. If it asks you for a 4th note that sounds like your name, never finish the song. And if you work nights and use a 3-note whistle the way I do, you and I have already met in the kind of dark that learns. If the concrete answers you with your own breath and adds a note you never taught it, go quiet and step inside a circle you trust. Feed it its echo with the cheapest tools you have. A cone, a match, a rule someone chalked a long time ago because they did not want to be alone. Then leave before the app remembers to ask if you are safe. Some things audit you without apps. Story 5. Room 313 checks you, and the printer at the motel front desk spat out a receipt with my name and a signature that looked exactly like mine before I even set my bag down, and the clerk, without looking up from his crossword, slid it onto the counter like fate was part of the check-in process. Outside, the neon arrow hummed over puddles that held the sign upside down, the way a mouth keeps a secret backward. The lobby smelled like citrus cleaner and damp carpet. A desk lamp flickered in a rhythm that made me think of old fish tanks. The wall AC clicked and fell into a 3-beat hum, like a slow heart rehearsing. Somewhere a TV hissed static, though none were on. If a room already knows your name, what does it expect you to do next? My name is Darren, 41, insurance adjuster. If you've ever followed a storm line through 4 counties and one tired diner, you know the kind of ache that finds your bones and unpacks a suitcase. I had one job tonight: sleep. Tomorrow at 7, I had to document a collapsed roof for a client who would smile like a shark while telling me he wasn't sure about my numbers. If I missed the inspection, I could kiss the contract and the year goodbye. My daughter was expecting a call at dawn to hear about her spelling test. I say these things because they build the ladder of what a night can take from you, rung by rung, while you watch. Storm knocked the town sideways. The clerk said without looking, pencil tapping boxes. Power surges fried half our electronics. Lucky you snagged the last vacancy. He circled 313 on a dog-eared map and slid me the keycard sleeve already printed with my name. The printer behind him purred and spat another receipt with my signature again, identical flourish on the D. It made me queasy the way seeing your handwriting on a whiteboard in a stranger's house would. You get a new printer? I asked, trying to sound casual, not like I needed the world to act like itself for a minute. He shrugged. It prints when it feels like it. Surges. He said surges like a charm to ward off blame. Phones cut weird too. If you need a wake-up, set your cell and the room clock both. Redundancy. He smiled without showing teeth, and I told myself I was tired, not superstitious, and took the elevator that smelled faintly of warm wires to the 3rd floor. Room 313 sat at the bend of the hall, like a coin someone had pressed into that corner and forgot to pick up. The door opened on the first try. The carpet had one cigarette burned near the desk shaped like a perfect circle, which is not how cigarettes burn. The AC unit in the wall clicked to life, settled into that same 3-beat pattern from the lobby, and the alarm clock by the bed blinked 313 in blood-red digits that felt too bright for midnight. The phone flashed missed call. Darren. I'll let the bag drop. Okay, I said to nobody because saying okay plants a stake in the ground. The television, dark, threw back my tired face. On the desk, an open guest logbook lay under a plastic blotter. Every line on the page read Darren in a dozen slants and strengths. Some looked like high school ballpoint. One had that elegant swoop older men learn with fountain pens. I touched the paper and felt the indentations left by signatures that weren't exactly mine. The AC hummed its 3 beats and paused as if waiting for me to sign too. I am paid to distrust coincidences. I am paid to find vowels behind walls and motives behind smiles. I called the front desk. The line clicked and a voice said hello in my voice. Same throat, same weather-tired. Front desk, Darren speaking. Then laughter, mine, but not mine, and the click the way a hand leaves a shoulder before you turn. I hung up and checked the door. The chain slid into its bracket by itself with a soft metallic decision. I should have left then, walked back to the clerk with the map and the smile, and asked for any other room. But the storm, the closed highway, the inspection at 7, my daughter's call at 6:30. The ladder rungs held. I didn't want to be the guy who flinched at a printer and a quirky phone. The TV came on with static when I didn't touch it. The hiss filled the room like a fine white crowd. Words crawled through the snow, syllables I knew too well. My daughter's voice saying, "Daddy," as if it was from a voicemail, except her name for me came doubled, like 2 recordings laid a breath apart. I turned the TV off and pulled the plug. The screen held a faint gray square with my reflection inside it, and I watched myself stand there and wished I didn't look like a man who would argue with an appliance. When I crossed the carpet to kill the AC, the circular burn near the desk felt warm under my sock, the way stovetops feel a minute after you turn them off. I lifted my foot, and the warmth was gone, like it had slid inside. The alarm clock rolled over to 3:14 and then clicked backward to 3:13 with a little electronic sigh, as if correcting me. I touched the casing. Cool. The AC hummed its three and breathed, soft as a sleeping animal pretending to be asleep. The printer in the hallway, through a wall and a door, clicked and spit another receipt. Paper slid under my room door, a welcome in the form of a bill. I picked it up. The charges listed items I hadn't touched. Bar tab, in-room calls, damages. The total sat neatly next to a timestamp, 3:13 a.m. I told myself the clerk had keyed my name onto another room's file. Happens all the time. The problem was the signature at the bottom. It was mine, with a little extra flourish on the end that I had stopped doing in college. The kind of change muscle memory forgets until muscle isn't the memory anymore. I grabbed my laptop to check my work email and settle my nerves with something stupid like corporate training modules. The screen bloomed to my company login, and under it, in gray, a recent activity note. Signed in, Darren, 3:13 a.m. My stomach crawled north. I pressed my cheeks with both hands the way people do in movies, like your skin is a mask you can reseat. A soft humming came from the bathroom. Not the fan. A low tuck of melody that sounded like me when I'm half awake and there's coffee coming. I stood in the doorway and looked at myself in the mirror, which showed me the bed behind, the TV black, the desk light flickering. In the mirror, I was sleeping in the bed. In the doorway, I was standing, holding my breath like it might be contraband. I did the thing we all do when reality jogs. I blinked hard. The sleepy me turned my head on the pillow and breathed a 3-beat rhythm. The AC matched it. The alarm clock held its red 3:13 like a coin stamped too deep. The guest log on the desk flipped a page. Ink scratched. No hand made it move, but letters formed anyway, the downhill slant of my last name repeating. The pen lifted and dropped twice like someone practicing pressure. I walked toward it, slowly, and watched my name write itself with the extra flourish I don't use anymore. I started laughing, not because anything was funny, but because laughter sometimes breaks a glass you can't see. It didn't break this one. The phone flashed again. Missed call, Darren. It winked exactly when the AC exhaled its 3. I dialed the front desk with the kind of calm you fake. The line rang once and clicked to a recording that sounded like me at the end of a long day. Front desk, Darren speaking. The voice on the line answered itself. Front desk, Darren speaking. And they overlapped until my head felt like 2 rooms trying to share a ceiling. I hung up and called myself in the room phone. My cell lit in my hand, unknown number 313, and a voicemail icon appeared without a ring. It was my daughter's voice saying, "Daddy, can you hear me?" But it had a half-second delay, like the kitchen when the radio news signal bounces wrong off weather. I needed a benign explanation, like a drowning man needs something that pretends to float. I stood on the chair, lifted a ceiling tile over the desk, and found a small router screwed to a brace, a mess of dead wires taped to the plaster. A red digital readout in its corner said 313. It wasn't plugged into anything. I unscrewed it, and it blinked 313 in my hands like a tongue. The circle burned by the desk had a twin I hadn't noticed around the phone base, a faint brown ring like something had heated there. When I touched the plastic, it shocked me with a tiny static pop and left my finger tingling as if the air were carbonated. I looked at the guest log again. Older pages at the bottom had browned at the edges. Names were all daring back to 1998, maybe earlier. The paper smelled like that sweet old book smell that hides mold behind nostalgia. If you ask why I didn't leave, you haven't tried doors that think you're already inside. The chain was still set without my hand. The deadbolt turned, and the door leaned into its frame like a shoulder that wants company. The elevator dinged, and I thought I heard a cart will squeak and then stop, as if someone had parked outside my room to listen. I called, "Hey," not to make contact, but to prove I wasn't afraid. The word got said at the same time from inside my room and from the hall, 2 me's using my weathered voice. It was more intimate than any knock. I signed my name only when the printer pushed a checkout slip under the door with a neat arrow penciled at the bottom line. The door wouldn't release otherwise. I know this because I stood there long enough for the alarm clock to roll forward. It didn't. It held 3:13 like my hand around my throat. The choice wasn't noble. It was the kind you make to move the world an inch so it will let you breathe. I signed, and at the end, I added a flourish I've never used. I dragged the tail of the N into a tiny loop I invented on the spot, a sabotage. The AC hiccuped once, a fourth soft beat, then went back to 3 with a shiver like it had learned something and didn't like the taste. The printer in the hall went to work, angry. The phone rang. The bathroom mirror brightened. In it, the sleeping me reached for the pen and wrote my ordinary signature with my ordinary flourish, canceling my change. The receipt under my door updated itself with a low crinkling, letters shifting, my surprise loop smoothing into the old tale I abandoned in college. My body did a bizarre thing then. It reached for the lighter I keep in my kit for heating stubborn labels. I don't smoke. I don't set things on fire, but some patterns you break with heat. I yanked the AC cord out of the wall. The 3-beat hum died, and something in the room inhaled like an animal woken too fast. I held the lighter to the round burn near the desk and fed the circle a small orange tongue. Heat rose, and the air above the carpet shimmered. The phone crackled, the TV hissed, and the mirror put grain into the image like an old camcorder under a bad bulb. The room tried to smooth my invented flourish on the receipt again, and I kept the lighter steady until the scorched smell got into my throat and made my eyes wet. "Daddy," the phone begged, my little girl's voice almost singing. The delay in her call had always annoyed me when we were out of state. Tonight, the half-second stagger was a hook. "Daddy, pick up, it's me." The printer rattled like a child, crying without tears. The alarm clock glowed, 3:13 bright enough to throw light under my nails. I stared at the mirror because the mirror was the place my nerve would leak first. The sleeping me looked like a man who could be forgiven for picking up the phone. He looked like someone who could explain things to a room. I let the phone ring. I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth and breathed through my nose until the shape of her voice hurt in a human way and not a check-in way. My hand shook. The lighter hissed and the circle burned bloomed. The heat lifted something I couldn't name off the carpet, like watching old sugar go from solid to smoke. The AC tried to start and failed. The alarm clock flickered once, twice, and for a full second, I saw 3:14. It stepped backward with a stubborn click to 3:13 and stayed, angry child. If 3:13 was a number, it was also a loop. The room wasn't a place you stayed. It stayed you. Resets at resistance. Receipts at signatures. Voices where wires couldn't. I understood in a shallow way, the way you understand a rip current when you feel it pull. You swim sideways or you drown in a circle. I gave the circle fire. The phone gave up mid-word. The printer spat a final page that said no balance due in a font that looked embarrassed. The mirror went flat and gave me only me. In the morning, the storm opened the highway like a hand unclenching. The clerk had a new pencil and the same half-smile. "Sleep okay?" he asked without raising his eyes. "Room prints its own paperwork," I said, sliding the receipts back like dead moths. He shrugged with all the gravity of a door closing itself. He didn't look at the burned ring on my shoe or the soft gray ash on my cuff. Part of me wanted to shake him. Part of me wanted to thank him for acting like this was ordinary, because ordinary is a raft. My email led the way back to the world. From my boss, "Thanks for checking in at 3:13. We see the approval form signed." Attached was a PDF with my signature at the bottom and a timestamp at 3:13 a.m. The flourish was the old one, not the one I invented. I stared until the numbers blurred. I thought about forwarding it to my own account and filtering by a word I couldn't say. The roof inspection went clean. My camera saw angles as angles and not as faces with opinions. My daughter called it 6:31 cheerful, the way kids are when they own one bright thing and wear it like a cape. "Spelling test," she said. "I think I nailed schedule. But why did you answer twice last night and say nothing?" It took me a breath. In the small hang between our voices, the delay stepped to the front like a shy kid asked to dance. Her words echoed half a beat late. Not phone company late, but room thinking late. Then it passed, and the line smoothed, and I had a choice about whether to tell a story that would move fear into her room like a couch. I didn't answer, I said. Then, because truth and safety fight, I added, phones glitch in storms. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't a kindness either. It was a rule. Rules are what we throw at rooms that want to know our names. I cleaned the ash from my shoe in a gas station sink with lemon soap and paper towels that left lint like snow. I threw the receipts away and found one in my wallet anyway. A quiet trick I didn't admire as much as I told myself I did. I tucked it behind my license like the first page of a book I wasn't going to finish. On the drive, the word 313 kept showing up without trying. Mile markers, prices, a radio station hiccuping as I passed under a bridge. I did not test hotel mirrors in daylight. I did not say my name out loud in rooms with phones. That night at home, I pinned my daughter's spelling test to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a little life ring. I set the alarm for 6. I placed the phone face down on the dresser. At 3:13, because of course I woke because habits and rooms are cousins, there came a soft little sound from the hallway like paper sliding under a door. I didn't move. I listened to the refrigerator hum 3 beats and pause, and then hum again, and the second time, something in the rhythm waited for me. I lay there and refused to be a signature. I lay there and breathed the way you breathe in a doctor's office when the nurse tells you to hold for 4 and let out for 6. Somewhere out in the night, a red sign burned over puddles and printed forms without hands, and I let the world be the size of my bed and the roof it sat under and the air my daughter would wake to in 5 hours. If you ever end up in a room that knows your name before you say it, tell the truth important to survival. You are not a form. You are not an approval. Break your flourish. Unplug the hum. Give the circle a little fire, and do not pick up the phone when it borrows a voice you love. If you have to sign, invent a mistake and keep it. Teach your hand a new loop that only you can read in the dark. Rooms like this live on repetition. We live on change, small and human and stubborn. Let that be the bed you carry. And that's all for tonight. 5 stories, 5 shadows that don't quite leave when the lights come back on. From radios that whisper your future, to mirrors that hum your name, to doors and bridges and motel rooms that want more than rent, these are the kinds of places you don't brag about visiting. If one of them followed you past the end of the story, don't be surprised. That's how these things work. They wait for recognition, and sometimes listening is all it takes. Thank you for staying with me through the dark. If you made it this far, you're braver than most. Tell me in the comments which story unsettled you the most, and whether you'd risk hearing the next one alone. Until next time, keep your doors crooked, your mirrors covered, and your breath your own. Sleep well, if you can.